Yes, you read that right. Alex Pereira's and Israel Adesanya's fates are tied by a substance as specific as alcohol. It may be the reason why Adesanya is 1-3 against Pereira, and he's beginning to lose to an opponent which Pereira already slayed. Alex Pereira was born to an Indigenous Brazilian family in an impoverished favela. He dropped out of school in order to work at the tire shop to cover his own expenses and to help out his family. Mixing in a 12-year-old amongst a bunch of drunk adult car mechanics obviously didn't work out. Alex began drinking cachaca heavily to the tune of 1 liter per day. While American teenagers at this age were playing video games, smoking weed, and complaining about not getting a car for their sweet 16, this savage was downing a bottle of rum every day while working hard at a tire shop to support himself and his family. Eventually, Alex turned to kickboxing and turned pro at 21 years of age. What's impressive is that Alex hadn't kicked his habit yet, no pun intended. He amassed an amateur record of 25-3 while still drinking and battling alcoholism. Like many addicts, he would quit for periods of time, but the moment he'd have a sip of alcohol, he would relapse and be back to square one. He realized that in order to reach the highest of highs in combat sports, he would have to give up alcohol altogether. He can either do both and still be above average but not the best, or he puts the bottle down and becomes a legend. And boy did he. He became a multi-division champion in Glory Kickboxing, then transitioned to MMA, and within 11 fights he conquered 2 different belts, while also tracking down his nemesis Israel Adesanya and finishing him in MMA, as well as beating people that bit Izzy and getting a light heavyweight belt. Something that Israel himself tried to do and failed. To this day, when asked how he stays away from alcohol so strictly, Alex replies with, "Everything that's been good in my life happened when I was sober. When I drank, I was only happy in the moment. Now, I'm happy all the time." Now let's take a look at how this vice banished by Alex Pereira seems to be finding a home within Israel Adesanya. It's almost poetic how diametrically opposed yet connected Israel's life is to Pereira's. Unlike Pereira, Adesanya was born to a middle to upper class family in Nigeria. Both of his parents were professionals, and Izzy didn't need to drop out of school to help them out. He even recalls having maids growing up. While Alex grew up in the same exact land in which his ancestors lived for thousands of years, Adesanya was more of a nomad. After having already lived in Ghana for a little bit, he relocated to New Zealand with his family at the age of 10. Here, Izzy battled demons different from Alex. Being an anime nerd and being different from those around him in his new home of New Zealand, Izzy was bullied. This is important to note, as it might be the reason why Adesanya is going through what he's going through currently. Just like Pereira, Israel turned pro at a similar age of 20. He moved to China and participated in organizations there until reaching the famed Glory Kickboxing organization. He was hugely successful and won the middleweight belt. This is where Alex Pereira first comes into play. He beat Adesanya and Glory in their first matchup by decision, and then a year later gives Izzy a nice send-off from the sport of kickboxing by knocking him out cold. Izzy leaves kickboxing alone and finds huge success in MMA. Fast forward a few years later, and Adesanya is on top of the world. At this point, he's loved by the fans. He's one of the biggest stars in the UFC, defended his middleweight UFC belt multiple times, and he's expected to challenge for the light heavyweight belt. Being the media's darling with his witty responses, he gets a curveball thrown at him. One interviewer asks him about Alex Pereira being the only man to have knocked him out and what he thinks of him. Adesanya belittles Pereira by saying that the man is basically a nobody and his future consists of hanging out at bars and telling some crackhead whores that he once beat the man that is on the TV, Adesanya. The fact that Adesanya chose a bar as the setting for the story is either proof that the universe works in mysterious ways, or that Izzy is petty to the point of trying to trigger Alex regarding his low level of fame at the time and his past battle with alcoholism. This interview would ultimately bite Izzy in the you-know-what. Let's not get too specific before Izzy gets excited. After this interview, Alex and Izzy were on a collision course to face each other again, except that once again, their roads were polar opposites. Adesanya, having achieved high levels of fame and wealth, seems to have gotten bored. He began winning boring point-scoring decisions over opponents that are frankly nowhere near his level. He was also a frequent guest on the podcast circuit and was enjoying the high life. Pereira's claim to fame at the time was only that he finished Izzy in kickboxing, however he quickly began developing a fan base. His style of destructive striking, activity frequency, and effective grappling defense was appealing to many, even though the man probably only knows 10 English words at most. Unlike Izzy, Pereira was clearly focused solely on fighting. He did some interviews here and there, but he wasn't trying to be a media person. By the time they faced off for the first time, Izzy had recently lost in his attempt to grab the light heavyweight title and won a decision against Whitaker that many thought he should have lost. When they faced off in MMA for the first time, Alex once again finished Izzy. The old bully came back and did it again. Took his belt and his glory. Alex skyrocketed in popularity. To Izzy's credit, he didn't sulk or put his head down. He got an immediate rematch as a decorated champion like he deserves, and in their second MMA bout, he flatlined Alex in a way no one else has before. This should be it, right? Having defeated his old foe and reclaiming his belt, the man should be free of his insecurities and be fully content, right? Apparently not. Instead, Izzy seems to have sunk deeper. Izzy's been getting weirder and it was noticed, making jokes on Twin Towers, throwing in cringy lines everywhere as if he's a battle rapper, and just generally being highly disrespectful to his opponents. None of this stopped with the victory over Alex. It got worse. When Dricus du Plessis finished Whitaker setting up Izzy's next fight, what did Israel do? Hop in the cage, clearly drunk out of his mind, and began spewing racially charged insults at Dricus. Izzy was so hammered he said 36 in me instead of 23 in me. Or maybe Izzy just has 13 extra chromosomes. Then when we learned that prior to his fight with Sean Strickland, Adesanya was arrested for a DUI, to which he pled guilty. Oh, by the way, Sean Strickland was knocked out by Alex and was then trained by him to beat Adesanya. In the build-up to the Sean Strickland fight, Sean exposed many vile things, including Adesanya's strange infatuation with dogs, to the point of sexual acts. Perhaps it was this that caused Adesanya's DUI and loss, or perhaps alcohol has been creeping up at Adesanya's life from before. Israel seems to have achieved fame and wealth without having dealt with his demons first. He mentions having imposter syndrome. However, I think there's much more than that at play. Having moved around frequently as a child and thus being an outsider frequently, Izzy seems to not have solidly developed an understanding of who he is. Bullied in his childhood for being an anime nerd, Izzy suddenly became the quote-unquote popular kid. Except this time it wasn't a local high school in New Zealand, but the whole entire world. Izzy may be going through some cognitive dissonance as to why the world is treating him like the cool guy, when growing up he was treated as the weird outsider. These demons may be leading Adesanya down the path of alcoholism. Compare Alex Pereira's response to their second MMA fight. While it was Alex that was knocked out, you would think he's the one that ultimately won from that fight. He immediately moved up to the light heavyweight division, and within a few months of being brutally knocked out, he defeated Jan Blachowicz, the same man that stopped Adesanya's dream of being the double division champion. Pereira negated the same strategy that was successful against Adesanya. He then finishes Yizi Prochazka at UFC 295, avenging his mentor Glover Teixeira's loss and achieving something Izzy could never do, winning 2 different UFC belts. Just like the popular meme, Alex is facing life with a stone-cold face and stoicism after having defeated his most difficult opponent in the form of alcoholism. As for Izzy, not only does he seem to still be haunted by the demons of his past of being a weird kid that was bullied, he's also sinking into alcoholism in order to deal with all the newfound failures and the hate he's receiving. Perhaps when Alex extended his hand to motivate Adesanya by reversing the bar story on him, Izzy needed to listen and literally walk out of that bar and get back in the lab. Let me know in the comments section below what are your thoughts and predictions on Izzy making an epic comeback or spiraling even further.